Today I'm going to be replacing my power supply. I had an issue with my computer where when I would push the power button, my computer wouldn't turn on. It would flash for a second and then turn back off. And I diagnosed that it was a power supply problem. And so I went ahead and ordered a new one. This power supply was $49.99 on Amazon, and it's 500 watts, which is plenty for my system, and it should be plenty for most systems unless you have either multiple graphics cards, or you're using a water cooler that takes a lot of power, or you just have really high-end components that are really power hungry. But in most cases, 500 to 600 watts is going to be sufficient. So let's get started. First thing we're going to do is, you always want to make sure you have one hand on the case so that you're grounded and you're not going to electrocute any of your components, especially your motherboard. You don't want to do that. So we'll go ahead and unplug the fans. My computer has 3 fans, and so I'm going to go ahead and unplug all of those. If you're putting this power supply into a factory-built computer, then you might have less fans. But in my case, I have 3 fans and several other things plugged in. Either way, you want to just follow the cables from your power supply and unplug them. And it would help to take a picture to document what's plugged in where, so that when you're inserting your new power supply, you don't have to, you don't forget to plug some certain components in. And you can just make sure you do everything right. I've done this many times, so I kind of have a little bit better idea, but I still often will document where all my stuff is. So right now I'm unplugging my hard drive. I unplugged my graphics card. Now I'm going to unplug the motherboard connector. There's actually 2 of these. And then there's the 4-prong, I think this is the CPU power. So we're going to unplug that. So as you can see, most of my cables are unplugged. Looks like they're all unplugged. So now you're going to go ahead and unscrew the screws from the back of the computer case. And keep a hand on the power supply so it doesn't fall onto your motherboard. Okay, all 4 screws are out, and the power supply should come free now. It shouldn't be glued in or anything like that. It should just come right out. Depending on how small your case is, it might be a pain to get it out. But there you go. This is my old power supply. Now I will grab my new power supply. There it is. It's just... Now your power supply will probably come with 4 screws to screw it in, and then some zip ties like this. May or may not come with zip ties so that you can organize it, but I do recommend using zip ties to organize your cables. If it doesn't come with some, you can use whatever. And I'm actually just going to use the screws that were already in my other power supply because I like the silver color on the back. So let's let's go ahead and use what came with it. So it came with 4 little black screws. So we'll keep the zip tie around the cables until we install the power supply. Make sure you have it in right side up. Look at the writing and the smaller part of the power cable pointed down. It doesn't really matter how you do it, but well actually, in my case, I have to do it upside down because this fan right here needs to be facing down. And so if you look at my other power supply, the fan was facing down, but for one reason or another this one is built differently, and so I'm going to have to install this upside down. Everything should be just fine. You just want to, there's actually a label on both sides. It's for different kind of cases. So it looks like you know, it's not going to look really upside down here. The small part will just be pointed up. So let's go ahead and do that. You want to make sure when buying a power supply that it is going to fit the form factor of your case. I believe mine is called a ATX case. The form factor is ATX. I have a mini ATX motherboard and a big case. Either way, you should be fine, but it's always good to make sure. I think there's probably a universal for the power supply. Screw holes in the back, so you'll most likely be fine, but you never know. Okay, the power supply is now secure, and so I'm going to unzip tie this bunch of cables coming out of the power supply. And if you get a power supply that is modular, these cables actually won't be attached already. You'll have to do that on your own. That's nice because there's less tangling and stuff because you don't have to install cables that you don't need. But then you have to make sure that you don't lose the extra cables in case you get hardware that needs them. In my case, I usually just go with a power supply that's not modular, and then I just zip tie the cables out of the way. So the first cable I'm going to plug in is the motherboard cable, and that's the biggest one. Yours might have one less set of or 4 less plugins, but this one has them. I've used my last power supply actually had. You can see here, it's one less, but both will work. There's no difference. Make sure there's no tangling involved. It makes it easier when you're zip tying stuff out of the way. So now I'm going to do the CPU cable, and I'm just basically doing this in reverse order of the order I unplugged stuff. And the CPU cable is a 4-pronged, so that's what I'm looking for here.